Please welcome to the stage Jen Taylor, President at Plaid, and Karan Anand, President at Brex.
Hello, SaaStr. I'm Jen Taylor, President at Plaid, and I'm joined by my compatriot,
Karan Anand, President at Brex.
I apologize, you didn't get any hype reel. We're going to have to find a way to close with your hype reel.
I need my money back. Where's the Brex branding here? So, I am wearing a T-shirt, though, Brex, so hopefully we get some PR. But
well, so our focus today in this course, this conversation, is for the two of us really to have a conversation as really sort of leaders within the context of the fintech space, helping our customers pioneer their journeys and explore new ways of working to work faster and more efficiently. I personally, so my background is I come from a history of product and marketing. I've built my career over the course of the last 20 years, really focusing on the needs of the customer. And I think that's very much, created and grounded my product philosophy, which is fundamentally our job as product leaders and as executives in these innovative companies is really to bring the perspective of the outside in and really to be the people that are helping identify the most interesting and most critical problems to solve, and then really think about how do we partner with the organization to bring these things to life.
It's building on that, very similar background. Grew up in the big company, big tech, Microsoft, 14 years, Facebook, Meta now, for 7 years, and then Brex. You come in and bring all that learning into like a much smaller, high-speed company. But interestingly, similar to Jen, your role, at Brex I get to do both product and run business, so it's sales, marketing, customer success, in addition to running everything product, which kind of just strengthens the same concept, which is our job is to bring the outside-in perspective and make sure that the product is delivering to the expectation that the customer, the competitive landscape requires. So yeah, our job is essentially a bridge to do that work well.
Yeah, and I think part of what got me so excited as we were preparing for this conversation is that we both sort of share this mission and this mandate to think not just about what it is we're building, but really the whole customer around it and the experience that they're going to have really from the point of awareness all the way through the experience with the product. And I think for me, that's been sort of the anchor of how I've thought about it.
Same here. I think that bridge analogy that just goes forward, which is there's so many decisions, so many choices to make, especially as a lot of you are also building out both the product roadmap. You need to balance the customer needs. You need to figure out the financial constraints. How do you juggle all of those? Is basically seeped into how your product philosophy evolves, which is ironic. Like, why would you worry about product roadmap in the context of fundraising, financials, customers, competitive landscape, and they're more intertwined in product building than you would imagine. So I think hopefully next few minutes we get to shine a light on that.
That's awesome. Great. So I think I want to just sort of pick the conversation up on a word I have definitely said like 20 times in the last 3 minutes, and I think you're keying in as well, which is customer.
Yes.
So how do you approach bringing the customer into that process?
And I'm not going to use the very over-abused phrase customer obsession, because I think a lot of people translate that into, yes, my product teams are talking to customers. And you dig deeper, you realize, oh, yes, they read a report from somebody in the sales team saying, oh, this is what the customer wants. But I think one of the things, I think Facebook did that in a very different way than Brex. I want to highlight like two very contrasting examples of large-scale consumer business versus the fintech business. At Facebook, we would eat data for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We wake up, first hour, most of the leadership team is just dashboard obsessed. We would look at trends and like hundreds of metrics, different cuts. And when you're at a scale of a Brex, which is both enterprise and fintech, and you don't have like billions of customers, you have hundreds of thousands, you have the luxury to go a lot more qualitative to build empathy. So I think good contrast is, you can be customer deep in the DNA. You don't need a ton of data. If you have data, that's amazing. But it's really important that every individual in the company, not just your salespeople, not just your CEO, everyone is having some airtime with the customer, live conversation at some cadence. And we record every customer conversation on a Gong call or a Zoom call and replay that for the whole company as frequently as possible. And I think that repository is deep in the DNA that there is no concept of you're right, I'm wrong. It's like customer's right, let's listen to what they're saying. And it's now just ingrained. So we start the breakfast is data dashboards, and we end the dinner with a customer dinner. So
you're getting a very well-balanced meal.
I know.
It's like all the food groups right there.
I joke that customers over dinner is helpful because wine and feedback goes better than oatmeal. So yes.
And I think for me, part of what I think has been interesting about the opportunity that we have at Plaid, and then also I think similar to the world that you have at Brex and things I've seen previously at places like Facebook and Cloudflare, is the diversity of customers, right? The ability to have an opportunity to talk with smaller organizations and larger organizations and use that as an opportunity to really kind of step back and like squint and try to identify like where are the common threads, and then what would the implementation of the solutions to solve that problem in the ways that they need, in ways that would build on top of each other, be powerful.
So on that note, Jen, obviously you've done a lot of big company, interesting, big scale companies. Yep. Are there 2 or 3 philosophies that you hold dear on when you're building product?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first for me is experiment, 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 experiment. One of the things that they talk a lot about when they talk about product management, stuff like that, is you got to have a vision. Mm-hmm. And for me, that vision is really about some like strong opinions loosely held, with the opportunity, especially as the way we all build and deliver product today, the ability to build and deliver things in small pieces to enable people to see and learn as they grow. Because it's important, it's so funny. Early in my career, when we were building in waterfall methodologies, you would have to wait and talk to customers at the end of the process.
Right.
We now have the luxury in the way that we're able to build and deliver products in incremental ways to learn and adjust as we go. And I think we're building better products as a result of it. And then the other is you're never done. That I think that for me, it's a constant process of learning and iterating, even in the most mature products. There are still customers in the world that are using it today, and our commitment to those customers and ensuring that we deliver to them, first and foremost, trust, reliability, performance, and security, regardless of what the product is job one.
Especially in the fintech space, like you do not get a chance to re-earn their trust. If you're touching somebody's money, those foundational investments are extremely, extremely clear. So yes. I want to go back to one word you used earlier, which is having a vision.
Yes.
And I think that's something, it's a deep part of our philosophy as well, is enterprise SaaS is littered with Me Too products.
Yes.
And there are very few, every year, every few years, you see a couple of breakout products which go into the billions of revenue scale. And I think one thing that I found common to your point, Jenna, earlier is these products started with a very, very bold vision upfront. Yeah. And they did not compromise on the vision, even though they were like short-term bumps and the market was not mature. But you have to genuinely believe and have high conviction that you can deliver on a vision. So I really like that word. That that's P0, and that's where the journey starts. You compromise on the vision early on, you will have a product. You'll never have a breakout product.
Yeah, totally. So the other thing that I think we also both have the luxury of is being in market, having customers, and getting feedback. Yes. And the great news is you've got this base of customers who are using it. They are helping you identify what's working, what's not working. But then there's always those folks who are not yet using your products, or parts of your vision that have not yet been realized, or directions and opportunities that they may not yet see. How do you approach that? How do you balance that like very direct, very specific, bird in the hand feedback with sort of other things you might be thinking about?
I'm a huge fan of using a lot of other SaaS tools for a lot of my survey. Similar to like I wake up in a dashboard. Yeah. The 2 other tools that we end up using, one is called Delighted, and another tool for just like doing a lot of call survey. But we manage that a lot with most of the customer advisory boards that we build. Yeah. Are always 50% are customers and 50% are people who either churned or never picked your product. Yeah. And it sounds very, very conflicting. Like, why would you bring a non-customer, a churned customer back to customer advisory board? And the reality is, those people keep you way more honest than the people who have already bet and are on your vision. So I think both a combination of a scale tool, which allows us to say constantly survey what's happening in the market, but real empathy comes from bringing the detractors into the room with your promoters, and that keeps everyone humble and honest.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah. Anything you guys deploy at Plaid to do that?
I mean, I think the listening to the detractors, I always try to remember, like when I think about building a product roadmap, I think there are kind of 3 pillars, right? And first and foremost for me is the feedback you're getting directly from your customers. And it's like, these are the customers, like part of why I like building enterprise SaaS products is that you have a commitment and a relationship to that customer. And so you're in a relationship with the customer, they're giving you feedback, being able to step back and listen to that feedback, again, identify those problems to solve and find ways to add them in is part of that. But the other is making sure that you're continuing to innovate. As I mentioned when I talked about like what is my product philosophy, it's about learning how to listen at scale and identify the problems. Right. And then in many ways identify the pain before the customer or the prospect can identify it for themselves. Like that's when you have the opportunity to leapfrog and you have the opportunity to experiment. Doesn't always work out, but you got to try. And then the third pillar for me, and probably the most important, is what I call trust, which, as I mentioned just a moment ago, is just like, as I mentioned, we are in a relationship with our customer and offering and making sure that whatever they are using in our product portfolio today, first and foremost, we're delivering performance, security, reliability, and building and extending that relationship of trust is really job one. That's sort of a non-negotiable. But a portfolio approach to a roadmap means, depending on the segment, the market, the age, those things are going to vary.
Indeed. I think something you mentioned is like, as you're building these products, just a quick show of hands. How many of you are on the building the product side? And how many of you on
builders.
And how many of you on the selling side?
Yeah, sellers.
Awesome. Love that. I think just to wrap up this part of the product building, I think one thing that's really important is this thing called the enterprise trap.
Yeah.
And it's very easy for any product, any company to fall into this innovation trap that we think of enterprise. And the reality is, there will always be feedback. There will always be this one other feature that you think will help you close the deal. And over a period of time, 80% of your customers will still be using 20% of your products.
Yeah.
And there's a fantastic Lenny podcast as well on like, you want growth? Don't look for like this next shiny little marble that will come and like unlock growth and features for you, because it very rarely does. What really drives growth is the core 20% of the product, which is why most of the product vision was built and what people adopt. So I think that's the part which is customer feedback loop is very critical, both from the sellers bringing that feedback in, but also try to avoid the trap of just one more feature will help me win more market. That's very rarely true.
It's interesting, too, when you realize that there are moments to sort of leapfrog the customer expectation. Like we had this recently, the gentleman who runs our identity team was spending a lot of time with customers and realizing that, like, obviously they care about making sure the users are secure, but they also want to streamline authentication. And of course, he had a huge roadmap of things that are on tap to be delivered. And he very quietly managed to sequester a little bit of resource when nobody was looking. And what I love about that and the process is that was really the birth of our new layer product. And the thing that has been fascinating about that is to see how, as we delivered that to market, just the immediate fit. And the way I credit him to being very thoughtful and strategic internally, not like not letting go of his commitments, but more importantly, his passion, his commitment, his vision to really listen to those customer problems, bring them together. And as a result, he's delivering a product that has fundamentally reshaped the way some of our customers are thinking about onboarding. And we're seeing great awareness and attach.
I love you got to leapfrog, because if you just ask customers what they want, they'll tell you the pain point now.
Yeah.
And it's your job, it's our job to make sure hey, you're solving what problem they will have and what problem they jump to. So love the leapfrog analogy.
Yeah, totally. And it's like you got to go, as they always say, you got to skate to where the puck is going.
Yeah, I think we blog about this publicly. It sits on the Brex blog. But when Brex decided to go from startup corporate card to we'll do expense management, every customer we talk to, they would be like, oh, awesome, we hate whatever we use today, I don't know, Concur or whatever else you're on. And they'll give you a list of 25 bugs and gaps that the product has. We came back, and the insight was not we were going to build all those features. The insight was awesome, we just need to kill the entire idea of expense reports.
Yeah.
And wow, you're not trying to go solve the gaps in this market today. You're essentially saying, hey, why does the world even exist the way it does exist? And you leapfrog.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe there's a world we never need to do expense reports. What would that look like? And then when you go back, they're like, whoa, this is crazy, but I can buy this much bigger vision to get to that end state versus trying to go through hundreds of small features to make my current world work. So I love that analogy on new categories of product get born when you leapfrog.
Yeah. Well, and just because obviously the topic is building products in the age of AI,
Yes.
how have you seen the insertion of buzzword AI, compelling technology AI, curiosity AI thrown into? How are you thinking about that? How are you factoring that into what you build and how you build?
So I'll start with like the most obvious acknowledgement of the fact that at the scale that we run,
Yeah.
in the fintech industry, you could not be running a global high-scale product if you're not already using AI.
Yeah.
So AI is neither new, nor it is like, oh my gosh, like I can build without AI. So I want to start by AI has been in the DNA, and I think there's a very funny Twitter post at some point was like, when it works, it's called AI. When it still is not working, it's called Gen AI. So you're still figuring out what to do with it. And I think I love that because I think all of us are thinking with AI from day one. But one thing that has changed recently, especially with the LLMs and generative AI, is it has given us a completely new user model
Yeah.
to think about. So last year, we had a core ML AI teams, and they keep doing what they're doing really well. We invested heavily in this net new experiences, what we launched as Brex Assistant very early on. So this was like literally weeks and months after ChatGPT launched, we actually were ready with a Brex Assistant. But that unlocked a completely new way of interacting. So the finance teams or employees, they are no longer doing AI risk modeling use cases. They are saying, oh, wow, I don't need to ever open the app. I have an agent, like my personal assistant at home or at school, executive assistant at work. You have an assistant that can reason over complex data.
Yeah.
I think that is the biggest unlock where we double down, which is finance teams now don't need to spend hundreds of hours going through ledger records. We can reason over that data. So I think the short answer here is, obviously, AI is fundamental tech. So there's no concept like building a fintech at this scale without AI. But there is an unlock on reasoning over large amounts of unstructured data, which is just not possible before. And if that's not part of the user model, mental model, you're probably not building the next generation of applications.
Totally. Totally. The other thing is it's also changing how we build. Like you mentioned before, qualitative. So it changes what we build. Like we're thinking about like, how do I build products that supercharge my user in a way that like takes the mundane, like makes them more efficient, makes them more effective, makes them smarter.
Indeed.
And like that's the superpower of like what you build, but how you build also. For me, you mentioned the qualitative and the ability to, I've always wanted to find ways to more efficiently listen at scale, and the ability to input all of that information and really use AI to help us synthesize and observe trends and things that we might not have seen has been really powerful.
I actually love that because like we always talk about how do you put AI in your product. The question is how are you making products faster and better and efficiently by using AI yourself.
Yeah.
I love that balanced perspective. So it's ironically AI everywhere in the build process, in the customer experience, but there is no world where you're building tech now without thinking about how AI sits in all those interfaces.
Yeah. Okay, so we have painted a very rosy picture to the work that we and our teams get to do every day. But obviously, not everything goes as planned. Like, talk to me about kind of how you guys think about that, how you approach it, and what do you do?
I'll start with a very old example. This was when it was still at Microsoft, and we were building cloud computing because people were like, oh, there is this future world, similar to how we're talking about AI, that there will be a world of cloud, which is ironic now where we are. And so I was on the Microsoft camp, and we were competing against the Amazon AWS camp. And one of the things we did was like, we got it wrong when we wanted to leapfrog and saying, hey, people want to build brand new net cloud applications, which are infinitely scalable. And we built some amazing Azure services on how do you build a brand new application.
Yeah.
And we completely read the market wrong.
Yeah.
Because what customers are like, hey, I love the vision, but I have these hundreds of applications that I'm already running.
Yeah.
Can you just help me run them in the cloud better and scalable in a more fault-tolerant way? And that was like a very eating a humble pie. We went back into building VMs in the cloud, which was what AWS was doing, versus like this massively scalable cloud services. So I think that's a very interesting example that you might have a more bold vision, you might want to leapfrog, but you have to read the market right and be humble enough to know that is the market ready or not. Of course, now everyone builds the application the same way, which is like seamlessly scaled, data separated, but that wasn't norm back then. And I think that was a great humbling experience, which is the best tech doesn't always win.
Yeah.
The most pragmatic tech almost always wins.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Anything you've seen recently?
I mean, I think there are two things I think about when things don't go awesome. One is own it, and the other is learn from it. And I think for me, the own it is two parts. One is acknowledge it and see it. call it. Like I think there's always there's a little bit of sunk cost fallacy. There's a little maybe just around the corner. You got to own it and identify it. The second is you got to own your commitments to your customers. Sometimes you don't know that it didn't work until you shipped it to your customer, or maybe you had an outage. You got to own that relationship. Stay accountable to that customer. Your job is to help make that customer successful. The second is there are no failures, as we talk about a lot in Silicon Valley. There are learning experiences, and big and small. Like how do we use each one of those as that moment and that opportunity?
Appreciate that. I think humility is core. Like you don't win if you're not humble.
Yeah,
and
totally.
You gotta, every once in a while, you eat the humble pie.
Okay. We got a little less than a rapid round here. Last topic. Okay. 3 things you would like this group of people to remember from this conversation today.
Rapid round. I think number 1, we didn't get to because that's leadership philosophy, is every one of you should be operating at all levels. And that's like the biggest mistake we've seen is like, oh, let me hire, let me delegate, let me scale. That's the best way to scale. And I know this is a very recent Twitter, LinkedIn blew up on founder mode versus non-founder mode.
Yeah.
We actually wrote about this on the Brex blog. It's called Operating at All Levels. It's part of Brex 3.0 philosophy. Would highly encourage reading that because the biggest fallacy in Valley or in the tech world is the only way you scale is through hiring and delegating. And as you've seen enough number of times, this is the time of efficiency. It's time to running lean. And it's not just lean because of burn. It's lean because that is actually a much better way of running. So number 1 takeaway, because we didn't get to talk a lot about that, is challenge yourself and your team and your leaders to operate at all levels. That's number 1. Number 2, as we talked about, is there is no product without AI in the future. If you're not thinking enough about it, hopefully coding against that as well, then you're probably not thinking about this right. And the third one is ultimately put the customer first. It's very easy to think about business, what you want to do, what tech you want to build. And it's very easy to lose sight of the fact that your bold vision has to land with the customer. So never forget the customer. Customer comes first. So operate at all levels. There is no product in the future without AI, and customer first. All right, that wasn't a rapid round from my side, but hopefully you're doing faster.
I'll flip it around. I'll go customer, 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 customer. And when I say customer, I also am talking about curiosity. Bringing your curiosity to the interactions you have with customers, using every interaction you have with a customer, whether it's a product development conversation, a sales conversation, a support conversation, bring your curiosity and use that as a learning moment to better understand your customers and the problems that exist for them and that you're looking to help them solve. The second is trust. We talk a lot about innovation. I love innovation. I want more innovation, but without trust, there is no opportunity to innovate. So remember the obligation and commitment you have to your user. Build that in a relationship through your product, through the way you engage, through you talk. Build a trusted relationship with that customer. You will become all the more valuable and all the more intelligent from that sort of thing. And I think the last is really, I think for me, is continue to experiment and try new things. I think I think it's important to remember that building phenomenal products are typically built on accident. Often when you're trying to actually do something else, that actually you kind of find your way, and the Valley is littered with examples of this. But some of my most compelling experiences and most interesting products that I've worked with teams to build have been happy accidents, as they used to say in the painting show, on the way to trying to actually build and deliver something else.
Strong plus one to that. I think we used to celebrate that both in Meta and now at Brex. Most of the things which have had breakout success were all experiments that came either from a hackathon or like somebody had an idea which like, oh, I can use this idea somewhere else. So the more you can cross-pollinate to unlock that, the more chances you have at like creating something completely, truly exceptional. So
awesome. Karan, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Pleasure meeting you as well.
Likewise.
Good seeing you all.
Thank you all for joining us.